Hello everyone. In this topic, we are going to learn about the wonderful treasure to mankind, which is the cocoa tree. Theobroma cocoa is a term referring to the tree that yields cocoa, an important raw material for the production of chocolate, which is one of the greatest treasures discovered in the 18th century. Chocolate has found to be originated from the Amazon base of South America. The Swedish botanist Carolus Linnaeus renamed the cocoa tree in Greek to Theobroma cocoa, which means food of gods. The term cocoa is a botanical name and it indicates to the entire tree, including the beans and products before processing, and the term chocolate for the processed beans in ground, liquid or in solid form. Talking about cultivation and processing, the different stages in the processing of cocoa starts from harvesting to commercial processing. The cocoa tree grows very well in tropical areas. Generally, the cultivation of cocoa tree is done under the canopy of a long shady tree and requires sufficient moisture and nutrients for its growth. Cocoa is also highly vulnerable to various rots, wilts and fungal diseases. The cocoa tree has large and lengthy leaves with pale colored flowers from which the large pods grow on the tree. The tree starts bearing fruit in its third year till its 20th year. The flowers take about 5 months to develop into cocoa pods. The color of the pods range from bright red, green, purple or yellow. The pods grow straight out of the trunk and the ripe pods are about 20 cm by 8 inches in length, oval in shape with sharp edges, possessing nearly 40 beans embedded in the white pulp. The next stage is the harvesting of pods when the pods turn to golden yellow in color, indicating the correct stage of harvesting for picking. The pods are harvested by cutting with knives fixed on long poles at varying distances. The cocoa pods are termed grain or seed. A pod or fruit is covered by a thick leathery rind of nearly 3 cm thick, containing 20 to 40 flat or round almond-shaped beans in a pod, varying in thicknesses from 0.5 to 1.27 inches that varies with the species. It is filled with sugary and gum-like pulp termed baba de coco, as it is called in South America, and it possesses approximately 30 to 50 large seeds. The seeds are whitish that turns reddish violet brown while it is subjected to drying. The next important step is the removal of beans, where the matured pods are opened within 1 week to 10 days. The harvested pods are split by a heavy mallet or knives fixed on long poles to open the pods at the center. That makes the splitting of the pods into 2 halves, followed by opening by hand. There are 3 distinct species of cocoa that are being used in manufacture of chocolate. The first one, Criollo, meaning native. Second, Forastero, meaning foreign. And finally, the Trinitario varieties. Criollo beans are most delicate and represents only 10 to 15% of world's production. Cultivated mainly in Central America, the bean is always used in combination with other varieties recognized by their dark purplish color. Forastero beans are much harder and higher yielding variety grown in Brazil and Africa, accounting for 80% of world's production. It has a stronger and bitter flavor and is used for blending of the different varieties of cocoa beans. Trinitario beans are a hybrid variety combining of both Criollo and Forastero. The world cocoa trade markets broadly 2 types of cocoa beans like fine or flavored beans, bulk or ordinary beans. Commonly, fine or flavored cocoa beans are obtained from Criollo or Trinitario varieties of cocoa varieties, while bulk cocoa beans are received from Forestro trees. Combined process of fermenting and drying involves curing. Fermentation lasts up to 1 week, followed by immediate drying. The next stage is to split the pods using a small sickle with extreme care without causing any damage to the pods for fermentation. The pods and the pulp are removed and collected in the form of a conical heap on banana leaves. When the heap is complete, the leaves are folded to cover the heap fully. This step initiates the fermentation process that gets completed in 6 days. The chemical process involved are complicated, but the atmospheric microbes like bacteria and yeast multiply on the sweet pulp that surrounds the beans, causing acidification and decomposing it to an acidic juice. The yeast act on the sugars in the pulp and convert it to ethanol. Bacteria converts the ethanol to acetic acid and then to carbon dioxide and water by the process of oxidation. This process raises the temperature from 40 degrees Celsius to 45 degrees Celsius in the heap, giving rise to changing conditions within the bean itself within 48 hours. Continued bacterial activity prevails till the bean dies due to the activity of acetic acid and high temperatures. This leads to the breakdown of the cell wall, causing complex chemical changes to occur in the bean due to the presence of enzymatic oxidation and the breakdown of proteins into amino acids. The color change takes place to chocolate brown and the original cacao smell emerges, which is the first crucial stage, the development of beans of superior quality. Other methods of fermentation include box method, where the boxes of measurement 60 by 60 centimeter that holds nearly 150 kilograms of wet beans. In the bottom of the box, there are a number of holes of 1 centimeter diameter at 10 centimeter apart in 3 to 4 rows. The beans are kept on topmost box, followed by covering it with banana leaves or gunny bags. After the duration of 2 days, the beans are transferred into the next box and then into the next consecutive box. The fermentation process is completed on the 6th day. The next method is known as the tray method, where only Forestro beans are employed. Usually, the sizes of the trays are roughly 90 by 60 by 12 centimeters, which could hold nearly 40 kilograms of beans. The bottom of the tray has an opening of 1 centimeter hole at 4 centimeter square pattern. Fermentation is similar to that of the previous method, but this process is faster and it is completed in 4 to 5 days. The next commonly practiced method is the basket method, where baskets made of bamboo or cane with 1 or 2 layers of banana leaves at the bottom are filled with the beans and is covered with banana leaves on the top. The beans are constantly raked on 3rd and 5th day and entirely covered with gunny sacks. This method requires 6 days for the completion of fermentation. The next method is the heap method, where the banana leaves are spread on a raised area over the ground to allow the flow of sweat liquid. The heaps are thoroughly turned in the 3rd and the 5th days. This process also needs about 6 days for the fermentation to be over. After the completion of fermentation, the beans are placed on bamboo mats or wooden drying floors to bring down the moisture content to 7.5% for 10 to 20 days in a thin layer of 2 to 3 centimeters. The beans are constantly raked to keep them ventilated and to prevent mold forming. In monsoon, artificial drying could be adopted for 48 to 72 hours at 60 to 70 degrees Celsius only. A cracking sound on compressing a lump of dried beans is an indication of the end point of drying. The color changes from reddish brown to dark brown. Talking about the quality aspects, the quality of the co-product is dependent on the quality of the raw cocoa. Fragile kernels with pure and bitter flavor possessing dark brown to red color is the indication of completely fermented and fully ripened cocoa bean. Perfect beans must not contain foreign matter or mold and must not be infested by insects. The beans should exhibit their characteristic appearance and odor of their variety without having sour, musty or smoky odor. The quality of cocoa beans is assessed according to the following criteria. They must be fully matured and ripened, correctly fermented, firm and uniform in size, loose and undamaged shells, reddish brown in color, and it should be a fragile kernel. Poorly fermented cocoa beans have a slaty to solid kernel and an astringent mouth-puckering flavor. The excessive heating in over-fermentation results in butyric acid fermentation, which impairs the quality. Coming to the packaging, cocoa beans are packed in bags of jute or sisal weighing 60 to 65 kg each. It must be stored in dry, cool and good ventilated and low humidity conditions. Talking about the modern manufacturing technique in cocoa processing, the first step is cleaning and grading. Cocoa beans are sent for chocolate processing after undergoing fermenting and drying. They have only been fermented and dried, but still they are enclosed in a hard skin which is dusty with the remains of the dried pulp. The beans undergo a preliminary cleaning where foreign objects are removed by the sieving operation. The beans pass on to a moving belt and from there to storage hoppers and to cleaners and the graders. The beans are carefully inspected for the removal of any shriveled or double beans and any undesirable material. The beans are then sent to roasting machines. Roasting is a crucial part of the process and serves several functions. First, it develops the flavor and aroma with color enrichment. Roasting also dries the husk surrounding the nib or edible inner part of the bean and makes it easier to remove. The following changes take place during roasting and fermentation of the roasted beans. Bean loses moisture, loosening of the shell, nib color turns dark and friable. Breakdown of amino acids and proteins take place. Volatile acids and other substances that contribute to acidity and bitterness of the beans are lost heavily. The changes that take place in the beans depend on the time and temperature of roasting and the moisture removal rate during the process. Over roasting destroys the natural flavor of the bean and produces a bitter product, while under roasting makes the removal of the husk more difficult and also fails to remove the bitterness in the bean. The roasting temperature varies with the type of the beans. The steps involved in the roasting process is, in drying, the bean is subjected to low temperature. This causes the drying and loosening of the shell, but does not impart a roasting effect on the nib, as the temperature does not exceed 100 degrees centigrade. This step is followed by a high temperature drying at the range of 127 to 130 degrees centigrade. After roasting, the beans are subjected to instantaneous cooling to prevent continued roasting internally. Winnowing is the next stage where the beans are passed through the husking or the winnowing machine, which cracks open the roasted beans and blows away the lighter husks away from the heavier pieces of the nib. Manufacturers may use the nib for producing low quality shell butter. The next step is crushing, where the loosened shell is slightly crushed in impact rolls comprising of 2 rolls in hexagonal shape running unidirectionally, thereby expelling the beans against the metal plates. The cocoa bean devoid of its shell is termed as cocoa nib. The nib or the cocoa mass is soaked in potassium or sodium carbonate for 1 hour, which is termed as dutching. This modifies the color and the flavor of the cocoa nib. Different range of colors can be produced by altering the alkali to the nib ratio. Slow drying follows this step, which results in removal of acidity, more smooth flavor and darker color of cocoa. The blending process is done with specified quantities of different varieties of cocoa nibs that are weighed and transferred to the blenders. Final flavor is obtained by blending 2 or more types of beans after roasting. The cocoa nibs are passed through a series of rollers, resulting in coarse particles that eventually turn to a paste known as cocoa liquor or unsweetened chocolate or cocoa mass, which contains 50 to 55% of cocoa butter. It then follows a second grinding to reduce the size to 27 to 30 microns. After grinding, the cocoa mass or the cocoa liquor flows out of the machine into shallow containers. Further treatment of the cocoa liquor depends on whether it is to be made into either cocoa liquor or cocoa butter, cocoa powder or chocolate. The processing of cocoa liquor involves the combination of cocoa butter and cocoa powder is produced from the cocoa liquor, which is a basic raw material from which it is made up of 50% of fat. Cocoa liquor is a principal ingredient in determining the final quality of chocolate. It is also called as cocoa mass or paste or chocolate liquor or chocolate. The Federation of Cocoa Commerce, which is FCC, defines cocoa mass or liquor as obtained from the cocoa nib, which may be roasted or unroasted with maximum 5% of shell and maximum 10% of ash, both on a fat-free dry basis, mechanically processed to a paste which retains the natural fat content of the cocoa nib. The flavor of cocoa liquor is governed by important factors like the type of cocoa bean, growing conditions, and the flavor development and the bean type and quality. Talking about the packaging and storage, the cocoa liquor is used in liquid form, so the temperature of the cocoa liquor should be maintained between 55 to 65 degrees Celsius. Since cocoa liquor is a dispersion of cocoa butter, it is stirred by a stirrer or a scraper regularly to prevent the liquid from settling at the bottom of the tank at 40 to 45 degrees Celsius. In solid form, it is packed in cartons, in solid blocks or in crumpled form in bags of 27 kilograms. Protection against direct sunlight and other heat radiation sources is essential during transportation, and it is mandatory to store it in cool temperatures of 15 to 20 degrees Celsius and at a dry relative humidity of less than 50% in dark conditions. The next important product is the cocoa butter. Extrusion, expeller or screw presses are the various methods of cocoa butter extraction from whole beans or mixture of fine nibs, small nibs and immature beans. With mild roasting or even no roasting, pressing of whole beans gives mild flavored cocoa butter. The extracted butter is kept in liquid or molded form. Talking about the packaging and storage of cocoa butter is stored in selective properly insulated tank containers or tank cars in liquid form during transportation. Loading temperatures are from 60 to 75 degrees Celsius depending on the duration of transport and the distance travelled. The next product is the cocoa powder, which is a major product from cacao. Extraction of large amounts of cocoa butter from the cocoa liquor is done for producing cocoa powder. Cocoa butter is pressed out of the liquor and the residue is used to form cakes, which is subjected to further grinding. wetting agents like lecithin is added for instant drinks and beverages. There are different types of cocoa powders like Dutch processed cocoa powder, low fat and high fat cocoa powders, natural cocoa powder, single origin cocoa powders. The Dutch processed cocoa powder is done by the addition of alkali known as Dutching, and the end product is termed as Dutch processed cocoa powder. It is treated with alkali to neutralize its acids, appearing reddish or dark brownish in color with good cocoa flavor and easy to dissolve in liquids. Alkalized cocoa powders tend to be smoother and darker in color. In low fat and high fat cocoa powders, most of the cocoa butter is removed when the cocoa cake is pressed. The amount of fat present in the powder determines the type of powder. High fat cocoa powders contain cocoa butter ranging from 18 to 24%, whereas low fat cocoa powders possess cocoa butter in the range between 10% to 12%. Coming to natural or non-alkalized cocoa powder, which renders a bitter taste and gives highly intensified chocolate flavor to baked products. Cocoa powder is highly hygroscopic and is vulnerable to foreign odors. Proper packaging and storage of the product is essential for maintaining the quality and extended shelf life of the product. To summarize the topic, let us see from the beginning. Theobroma cacao is a term referring to the tree that yields cocoa, an important raw material for production of chocolate and cocoa-based products. The term cacao refers to the tree, the beans and the products before processing, and the term chocolate and cocoa for processed beans and concentrated cocoa powder respectively. Ripe cocoa pods are about 20 cm by 8 inches in length, each containing 20 to 40 beans embedded in white pulp which is soft and sugary. The cocoa pod is ready for harvesting when it turns yellow in color. The pods are opened within 1 week to 10 days. A pod or a fruit has a rind which has leather-like texture containing 20 to 40 beans in a pod in a mucilaginous pulp. 3 species of cacao are used in manufacture of chocolate, namely Criollo, Forastero and Trinitario. The combined process of fermenting and drying of cocoa is curing. Fermentation lasts up to 1 week, followed by immediate drying. The beans are subjected to final quality check and packed and stored. The cocoa beans are subjected to cleaning, roasting and winnowing steps for the removal of the outer lighter and feathery shell. The cocoa bean devoid of its shell is only termed as cocoa nib. The nibs are treated with alkali termed Dutching, followed by a blending and grinding to yield a paste called cocoa liquor. Further treatment of cocoa liquor depends on whether it is to be made into cocoa liquor, cocoa butter, cocoa powder or chocolate. Cocoa butter and cocoa powder is produced from cocoa liquor, which is a basic raw material from which it is made up of 50% of fat. Pressing of whole beans gives cocoa butter, and this residue is used for manufacturing cocoa powder. Thus, to conclude, we find cocoa bean is a wonderful gift of nature to mankind, and this bean also yields many health benefits and gives high commercial profit worldwide. Thank you.